I'm always a mess. What can I say? I've got a face for radio. Or I got a face for podcasting, is what I should say. Alright, so can we get into a better position? No, there? Actually, I could hold it here. I don't know if it makes a difference. I'll put it here, because this seems like it makes more sense to me. Should be able to work on that score. I don't know if that makes any sound. I should probably listen to some of these files to make sure I know what I'm doing audio-wise with this. All right, so I did some looking around today, last few days actually, trying to figure out the best themes for some of the podcasts that I want to build. So I'm going to go over that a little bit, just walk you through some of my process, because I think that's half of the fun of doing some of this. Now, I'm going to be taking a look at SoundCloud, Buzzsprout, and Podomatic as the options of supporting podcast creation. Hosting podcast, I guess is what I should call it. And I kind of decided the other day that I kind of want to do 3 different styles of what I wanted to play with. And part of that is looking at the idea that I have some variety to the way I want to pursue podcasting. Because each one of these things I'm going to do differently than most people usually do a podcast. Now, SoundCloud, I think, is pretty relaxed. Let's see. I'm going to hop back out and take a look at what they have on their website as they're listing. So SoundCloud, so Buzzsprout has Buzzsprout. Okay, Buzzsprout is 2 hours each month I can upload. Episodes hosted for 90 days, so for 3 months. And up to 2 hours of content. But, so what we're looking at here is, yeah, just don't make noises on my computer, please. And I think for now, what I'll probably end up doing is website hosting some of my stuff. And then I might get like a Wix website just to host them and then link those to Google Play. I don't know if I can get into iTunes. I haven't really figured that one out yet. It's a little unclear. Okay, so the Podomatic seems like it has a fair number of options, and I think they're going to have me. Podomatic has social sharing options, and your podcast can be played directly on Facebook and Twitter. And so what I want to do with that one, I think, is that's going to be more of the story adventures. And they say they are partnered with Weebly to help you create a website and have a free podcast app for iOS and Android. And their plans are I create a podcast. I think free podcast hosting forever. We got all the features you need to start with our free account. So you can store up to 6 hours of recording for free, 15 gigabytes bandwidth per month, up to 180 hours of nonstop listening, enough to grow a cult movement. Some basic stats and no expiration. Not a trial, no expiration, simply till the end of civilization as we know it. So, 6 hours of recording free. That to me is something that will be beneficial for the longer format podcast structures that I'm going to do. So for Podomatic, with 6 hours, you have what I'm choosing to do is call them choice tales, and it's basically I almost want to call it a save or die scenario, because that's what it's called sometimes in role-playing games. Is there's a challenge. Roll your dice. See if you survive. If you don't, your character dies. Get a new character. I want something a little less random chance. And so narratively, what I'd do is I'd structure a story where I narrate a chunk of thing for indeterminate amount of time. So it could be a 2-minute lead up, or it could be a 7-minute lead up. Either way, I don't have to worry about the size of the individual sections because we're using the left-right audio channel aspect. So what we're looking at is narrating a scenario where you get clues and bits of information, and based off of that information, you come up on a point where you have a binary choice, left ear or right ear. And based off of that outcome, the choice you make, and sometimes the consequences can be immediate. You make the choice to go left and you run into a wall and the door closes behind you and you're stuck in this small closet, and then it slowly starts to fill with water and you drown. End of story. And sometimes it could be a longer narrated path that you're following of events. It's sort of like a blind alley. Like when I do my hand-drawn mazes, there's sometimes an element where the maze branches. You take a left path, that path may go on and on and on without anything else branching off of it and not hitting a dead end. And then eventually it'll loop to a section and then hit a dead end. And that's sort of like, oh, I followed this big long path and it ended up being the end of me. But in a narrative style, you can tell story elements along that path. But if you take the other path, that one can persist for, it has to persist at least as long as the dead end. Because you cannot have it be shorter. You only have the left and right channels to play with for right now. And so if I'm going to do that, building the structure around the idea of, oh, I got such an earache right now. Building this, building this story around there's always a right path and a wrong path. It's limiting. It's not as freeform as a true choose your own adventure or some of those other types of games, but in a way, it's very liberating to have the time frame. I could make. I mean, they give me 6 hours. If I did one of these every month for 6 months, I can make the file an hour long. And the trick to that is, if I'm building these choice tales, as I'm calling this set, the choice tales being the way I figure it is, if each segment is 3 minutes long, I can put as many of them as I want in a row because we're using the left and right audio channel. So you're always going to have, say, 1 or 2 minutes max as your dead ends. So if you have, say, 10 dead ends, so 10 choices you make during the course of one of these games, and every time you make a choice, one of them has to dead end, you're going to end up with basically 20 minutes minimum for each of the sections, because you have the 2 minutes right choice, 2 minutes wrong choice for each set. And then you can probably add another 2 minutes on either side for the lead in, or maybe even 5 minutes for the lead in, and then 3 or 4 minutes for the close. So you would have 30 minute long episode would be what you'd get. Now for the player, they're going to get a 10-minute play, roughly 10-minute play. And so for every 10 minutes that they do, you're making almost 3 times as much recording, because you have to you record the options they don't choose and the options they choose. So for me, being able to say with Podomatic that they have a 6-hour recording storage, 500 megabytes, that makes it very possible for me to do, so 6 hours, if I do a half hour for every episode of recording time, that gets you pretty much a year. And then at a certain point, I can pull those out and put them over into like a YouTube channel with a slideshow or something. With some of the other options that are out there, I don't have as much free space to go. So looking at, that was the other thing I was trying to look at, is I believe SoundCloud, with a free account, you can upload 3 hours of content per month. And so that one's a little bit different. So, and then the other one I was looking at was Buzzsprout. With their free plan, you get 2 hours. So Buzzsprout is 2, SoundCloud is 3, and Podomatic is 6. So for the longer form podcast approach that I'm taking, I think Podomatic, I keep thinking I'm saying that wrong. Yeah, Podomatic is the better option for the longer form. And the choice tales are going to be longer form. So this is sort of like what we were talking about last year when we were talking about potentially doing a corn maze. You're going through the maze, go left or right. If you go right, you're going to maybe hit that dead end with a witch at it, and it kills you, and you have to go back to the start and start over again. And I can make that maze as long as I want. If I only want to make 3 of them, and every 3 months cycle those out and put a new set in, then I can make a 2-hour long audio adventure that the player gets half of that, essentially. So they'd get an hour-long audio adventure that they could proceed on. I could build one that way. Podomatic makes that possible. Whereas with the other formats, one of the things we're looking at is, I kind of had a name for the trivia game that I wanted to build. I was thinking of picking up Steam, STEAM, and thinking of doing a different quiz each month for a different part of that category system. So science, technology, and engineering, arts, and mathematics. I'm rethinking some of that at this point, because honestly, the thing I want to do most with some of that is some pop culture and some fun stuff too. And I don't want it to be all, science, math, quizzes. That's less fun for me. I think it has some potential, and there may be some of that I want to do. I might end up just doing some of those kinds of things and uploading them as videos to my Steaming Mad channel on YouTube. But I may rethink the name and rework what content I'm going to use for making my quizzes. The basic structure I'm going to use for that is a 10-question quiz, pop quiz. I mean, I could call it pop quiz and do pop culture stuff. That's definitely an option. But the structure for that is ask a question, and it doesn't matter how long I take to lead up to the question, because again, this is not a timed segment. So I can ask a 4-minute long or a 1-minute long, and I can have a 4 and a 1 in the same quiz. But I think I want to set it to 10 questions, and each question gets a binary answer. Is it option A or is it option B? And then they choose which option they're going to listen to, and then they go to the next question. This is non-sequential, so it doesn't matter story-wise whether or not, neither of them have to dead end. So it's possible to do something along the lines of where there is no right and there is no wrong, in which case it's not really a quiz at that point. It's really more of like I could do some of that BuzzFeed stuff where it's like, do you like chocolate or do you like vanilla? And when we get to they pick an answer, we talk about a little bit about their choices and what it maybe says about them, and give them a point value and or a letter even. And at the end of the 10 questions, you can then go down and say, like, if your results spell this, or if your results equal this string of numbers, then you are this type of personality. I could do things like that with that. And that's doable. That I think I'm going to be doing with Beamsprout, because if I remember correctly, Beamsprout has the 2-hour plan. So the biggest restriction on that one is the time frame I have for storage. I get 2 hours per month, episodes hosted for 90 days. So after 90 days, done. But each month I can put 2 hours up. So I could do a half-hour quiz structure every week if I wanted to. And at the end of the month, cycle some of those out. So, I mean, that's definitely a possibility. I'm a little curious at this point, because it says you're limited to 2 hours each month, which pretty straightforward. It means that you can only host 2 hours per month. Episodes hosted for 90 days. My question with that is that I upload an episode and they'll only host that for 90 days, But if 10 days later I upload another episode, is that there for 80 days? Or is that there for 90 days from when I upload that one? And that's something I'm going to find out just by trial and error, I guess. But this format of quiz, I think, is something I can more easily generate the content for. But the other story type structure that I want to look at, and is probably going to be done with SoundCloud, because I think with SoundCloud, it looks like we've potentially got 3 hours hosting per month, 3 hours of content per month, and get basic reporting. You can upload 3 hours per month. I don't know, maybe I should do the quiz questions on SoundCloud instead. I think it'll depend roughly on, I mean, SoundCloud, we know, has the 9-button feature. I don't know if the audio files for any of the others would work that way. But with SoundCloud, I was with whichever one I choose to go with the 9-button option. And by that I mean you set up a story, you do a narrative piece, and you can make that only a certain size, because each segment has to be the exact same size. And you're going to do 10 segments. Every video is going to have 10 segments, and every segment has to be the exact same size. So ideally what you're looking for is 3-minute size, because then you're going to end up with about 30-minute video or audio file. And the reason you have to do it that way is because the keyboard feature of hitting the 1 key will take you to 10% into the video or the audio. Hitting the 2 key gets you 20% into the audio. 3, 4, 5 gets you 50% of the way in. 9 gets you 90% of the way in. And so if you set them at that even pace, you can jump from section 1 to section 4 by just hitting the 4 button. And that's a useful feature, but it also establishes some pretty hard limits on what you're going to make. It establishes that everything has to be the same size. Everything has to be a set placement. You have to know which one it's going in before you even record it, because you got to be able to tell somebody at the end of section 2, if you want to do such and such, go to section 5, hit 5 on your keyboard. So you have to, it's very structured. And even more than that is the problem that because you only have those 9 buttons roughly, you can't indefinitely run a story out. With the choice tales, I can have 37 choices made during the course of the adventure in a line. So the character could make choice 1, which leads to the next part of their adventure, which has two more choices, and one of those choices dead ends, and the other leads to 2 more choices, and one of those dead ends while the other one leads to 2 more choices. And you can run down that line as many as you want. If I genuinely wanted to, I could build a 6-hour-long audio file, and the player is going to get 3 hours of playtime from that. I could totally do that. I'm not likely to do that, but I could. With the one that uses the 1 through 9 buttons, I can make each of those sections an hour long if I want to. I won't be able to find any place to host it. A 9-hour long audio file, none of these services would host it. I'd have to host it on my own website. But every section would have to be an hour long, and I could only have 9 sections. So it's got a hard limit on a lot of those features. So what I was thinking of along that line is doing some very simple stories. Largely, it's going to be start with the intro of how the game is played, get into the opening, get to the first question pretty quickly. And that question has 2 options, usually has 2 options. You might be able to throw in 3 options on occasion if later down the line you clip options. Now, you have your 2 options up here that leads to 2 different sections, section 3 and 4, roughly. And each one of those has usually 2 options. And so you have, that leads to 5, 6, 7, 8, and then you have one more option at the end. Basically, everything else is going to dead end, and one of them leads out. You could structure some of it a little bit where you have the open 1. So 0 to 1 with 2 choices leads to option 1 technically, and 2, each with options that lead you to 3, 4, 5, and 6. And they lead you to options 7, 8, 9. One of them has to dead end. But you can structure it a little bit differently each time you do it. So like I said, you have the option of having a choice lead to more than 2 options. One of the choices stays on its same track. One of the options, basically you're just choosing that it has one choice. It's not really a choice. It'll continue on its own path. You're basically saying option 3 and 4, or section 3 and 4 are a single section. It's an option. You could do that. It gives you a little more wiggle room and structure. But it's definitely one of the harder ones to structure right. And I don't imagine I'll be creating a lot of those on a regular basis. The sheer amount of editing and workarounds you have to do to get that to work, I feel like that's going to be, I mean, they say I can upload, what was it, 2 per month? No, SoundCloud is 3 hours per month. I don't imagine I'll be doing hour-long ones. So I imagine saying half-hour episodes. And if every section is 3 minutes long, at most, that means gameplay for the player is going to be 8 to 9 minutes. So it's an 8 to 9 minute game. But the storage would be for a half hour. And each half-hour game would take up 1/6 of what I could store per month. Now, I don't know enough about SoundCloud to know if I upload 3 hours of content in, say, September, that come October, I can still host those 3 hours of content and now add 3 new hours of content. Or if I have to take down that 3 and put up a new 3. So I don't know the specifics on that one yet. I guess it's really just try it and see what they let me do. And then I guess at this point, the real question is the quiz one. Because those are going to be pretty straightforward. They're going to be come up with a topic, come up with 10 questions based off of that topic, and then record the questions and record the responses to the choices made. Upload. That's pretty much what it is. So those are pretty straightforward. The choice tales, which are the linear long ones, those are going to be trickier, but they're a little bit easier to do because you don't have to build stringing narratives or branching narratives. It's mainly string. You start out with an option. One of the choices you make is wrong. Your next choice, one of your choices is wrong. So you're really just telling a narrative and then adding dead-end branches off of each point you feel is an appropriate point for a question, where you want to give them the opportunity to make a mistake and fail. That's really all there is to that one. The SoundCloud one, the one I'm calling the Fabulists game, that's the one with the 9-button choice. And that's going to be a lot of work. That is going to be a huge amount of work to get each one of those done. I feel like it might even be generous thinking that I will get one done per month. That's a lot of work. I would almost wager you that each one of those is going to be a solid day's worth of work. I mean, like a full 16-hour day. Because you're going to be recording half an hour to an hour worth of content, editing that content, arranging that in an editor so that they sequence right with the end cards that ask them to choose which option, lining up to the second where you want it to line up. And yeah, I mean, that's just the structuring and building of it. That's not the writing of it. Writing a structure where you write the intro, the first chapter, choices A, B, and then writing 2 or 3 more chapters that are contingent only on half of what you've already created. So basically, Steve goes to the fair. When Steve goes to the fair, he has the option of going on rides or trying his skills at the Carney Games. Now I have to write, if he goes to the Carney Games, which games does he try? Does he succeed? What happens at those Carney Games? And where that ends up leading. And then on the other side, I have to choose which rides, which events happen during those rides, and where does that lead towards the end of the story. And I have to build those structures, record them, slot them in the right places at the right size, with the end cap that tells you which piece to jump to next for your section, lined up correctly. It's a lot more work. And writing stories in that way where you essentially you're writing, it's sort of like the alternate endings in certain movies they did for a while in Hollywood movies. For the alternate ending, watch the extended cut or special features on the DVD. It's like, yeah, you could totally do that. But you have to realize that if you are recording half an hour to an hour worth of content, they're getting 9 to 12 minutes of play at most. You're more likely to get 5 to 9. So the creation is half an hour long. The process of getting there is going to be several hours. Yeah, that's just based off of a 2-minute structure for each segment. If you do a 5-minute structure for each segment, more than doubles the effort and time. And the reshoots you'd have to do if any of your segments turn out to, if you're reading your segments and they turn out like, that's 3 seconds too long and I can't trim it anymore. I have to add seconds to the other sections or trim this one somewhere that I don't want to. It's definitely going to be an interesting one to work on. Now, I do feel like I had some other things that I was looking at too, because I do want to do some of the YouTube playable. So basically, it's like a full choose your own adventure where you would have however long the video wants to be. And using the chapters feature on YouTube now, I can say, if you want to do this, jump to chapter A1. If you want to do this, jump to chapter B4. And so on. I can build out as many of those as I want. I can make hours and hours long video. And your playtime will probably end up being about 20 minutes. But it gives me the option that each segment can be its own size. And it gives me the ability to do far more branching. So with the choice tails, you get right choice, wrong choice, right choice, wrong choice, right choice, wrong choice. That's your only option. With the Fabulous game, you have 1, 2, 3, finish. That's your structure. You can vary it a little bit. You could do 3, 3, and I should say 3, and then 3. I mean, yeah, you could do a little bit of variance in the structure, but you're really stuck with that 9 form. The quiz structure is a right and left channel, so there is really no branch structure. It's always going to be 2 options, 2 options, 2 options each segment. With Choose Your Own Adventure, I can literally say 3 options, 5 options, 2 options, 4 options, and each section can have more options off of it. I could end up with 42 subsequently different endings if I wanted to. And I'm not really limited by that structure. But that does make it substantially more work to script that all out. But the editing becomes a fair bit easier. You literally record all the sections, you stack them in whatever place you want to stack them in. You make reference to where they need to go from one to the next. And then you write down those timestamps in the description of the video, and it'll section them off and tell you which chapter is which, so that when you scroll over that bar at the bottom of a video, those sections will pop open enough to tell you this is section A154. And if that's the one you need to choose, then it'll click on the beginning of, you can click on the beginning of that chapter and it'll take you right to where you're supposed to be next. It's a little bit easier on the editing. It's definitely an option to pursue. It's something, I mean, I like the idea. I think it being YouTube, I have a tendency to want to make a slideshow or a video for it, not just audio. But I am acutely aware of the option that I can set a green screen behind me, set an atmospheric tone. If I wanted to do a horror story, I could do a horror story with dim lighting. Let's see if I could do dim lighting and have candles flickering around me and tell a spooky story. Or I could do a lighthearted, fun adventure story or a goofy comedy. And the green screen, I can use a simple piece of artwork behind me to set some of the mood. So lighting, art, still image behind me, and just me narrating the story. It's doable. Ideally, having maybe some props or even illustrations for each of the sections would be nice. So I could do them as sort of like a slideshow. I mean, it'd be really great if I could get some animation done. But that's a cost and a time suck. It would just make it hugely impractical to do them. But I also have the option. There's a mechanic that you can use in certain choose your own style game books that are not just narrative, choose your narrative kind of things. Choose your own adventure is usually just if you choose option A, go to this page. If you choose option B, go to this page. And the story proceeds based off of your choices. There is a mechanic in some of those games that came out around that time where if you went from opening chapter to option B, and then your choice at end of option B was to fight the monster you came across, you would then go to the section it tells you to go to, roll dice to see if you have what you need to beat the monster. And if you don't, you take a certain amount of damage. You keep a little character sheet where you mark certain things off your sheet. And if you get too much damage, you die and you end the game. If you manage to beat the monster, then you get something from that, and then you go to the next section of the story. And then at another point, you might encounter a guard who you might be able to talk your way past, but if you don't succeed at the talking past them with a roll of the dice, then they want to fight you. And if you have the option at that point to run or fight, and you still have the damage from yourself when you fought the monster, so you can take less damage from the guard. But if you earlier in the story bypassed the monster and got directly to the guard, you might be able to beat the guard. And so these little mechanics that let you make those choices, it changes a lot about the game, and it makes it an actual game. It's a role-playing game you get to play. And that's an option I can do with YouTube that I can't do really well with the other three. Now, it's possible that in the structuring of audio files for podcasts, I could potentially do the same thing with setting certain markers as to where to go. Like that was one of the things we were talking about the other day when I was looking at the SoundCloud webpage, when I was looking at some of those files where people have left comments at the bottom of the file, they leave comments starting at the point they're referring to in the audio file. So if you have an hour-long podcast and somebody puts a marker down that says, ooh, this is my favorite part of the talk, there's a little icon of them tagged right to that spot. Now, I could theoretically make comments on my own SoundCloud projects and make comments at the points where you go to the next section. You know, this is section B47. So if you're making a choice over here that says go to B47, this is the point where you're jumping to. I could conceivably do that. It's certainly not the most optically ideal approach to that, because the little icons for the people who it refers to, they're really quite small. You hover over them with a mouse and it'll pop up with their comment, which in this case would be the title of the section that I want you to jump to, and then the person who commented it. It's an okay thing. I don't know what other what the Podomatic or the Buzzsprout options look like, if they have any of those capabilities. I suppose I could take a look right now while we're here. Listen to podcasts. What do we got? Let's just say, let's not get anything audio jumping on here. Can we go? DJ Miss. I feel like, okay, I'm going to take a real risk here. I'm going to move this mic away from the speaker just in case it does start making sound. No? You're not going to play it for me. Cool. Yeah, I get it. You want me to upgrade the browser, but that's not happening right now. Could you move on, please? You're not helpful. Totally not helpful. I'm just trying to listen to a podcast. Oh, for pity. Okay, so it's clearly not going to let me do this right now. I wanted to try this out, but I don't think it's going to let me. No. It's not going to let me play any of these files. Okay, there we go. Can I mark at any point? So mute it. Jeez Louise. So there doesn't seem to be any way to mark it at different sections, but I can jump to individual timestamps. It's not the best approach. So that's on Podomatic. I don't know if you can still hear me. I'm holding it out of the way. Okay, so that's not ideal. And it doesn't give me that feature that I'm looking for in that particular function. So let's see Buzzsprout. Oh, for God's sake, don't tell me that it's a bad gateway to go to Buzzsprout. Jeez. Everything's picking a fight with me tonight. It's not a... God, I hate this seat. Anyway, I'm being grumpy now because I've been sitting too long, I think. Can I listen to them anywhere? Oh, okay. So Buzzsprout, digging through this a little bit, it does seem to say it's free for 90 days. It's not 90 days for your free membership every time you upload something. It's literally after 90 days, you're done. Okay, so episodes hosted for 90 days. So you get a 90-day free trial. So I get 3 months and then I'm done with them. That's fine. I will use them for my trivia quizzes and move on when I am done with them. Yeah, that's fine. That's not a huge deal. I wanted to see, their next option is 3 hours each month, unlimited hosting. And that's $12 a month. Okay, so I just want to find existing podcasts. I want to open one up and get a sense for what they've got. What? Come on. So I can't go to their website and listen to a podcast. Like, they list them on podcast aggregators. So Apple products, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, iHeartRadio, TuneIn, Alexa, Overcast. Yeah, they're all listed on those services. So I can't actively find any in here to see what they'd look like. Okay, so that definitely puts a huge marker on their service. It not only has a limit to how long I can use it for free before I have to pay to use it. $12 a month isn't bad. It gives me a podcast website. Embedding player. Get into directories. I could get transcription for 25 cents per minute. I'm not sure I want to do that. Yeah, and they have more expensive options. You can do 6 hours each month for $18 a month, or 12 hours for $24 a month. At some point, if it looks like I'm making enough from some of my creative ventures that it's not an exhaustive cost, that it's more sustainable, maybe that's an option. But for right now, I think I will dabble for 3 months, 90 days, doing trivia on these. And I get 2 hours each month that I can upload, which is about 1 per week for my quizzes. I might just do like, if I do like a top 5, I don't know. I'll think about some of the structures of some of that. But yeah, that's definitely the one with the biggest hurdle. It sounds like they offer access to the big marketplaces that some of them don't necessarily. Earn revenue with advertising and crowdsourcing for Podomatic. Create a podcast and promote it. So you got the right tools to introduce your show to the world. With Podomatic, your podcast can be played directly from Facebook and Twitter feeds, and you can embed your episode on your site or any other social media network. From house music to comedy and politics to technology, there's something for everyone. So they have an app to listen to podcasts on Apple Store and Google Play. Record and publish from your device. Easy to record high quality episodes, publish instantly, or simply add to your media library and edit and publish later. No equipment, no cables, no mess. Okay, so it looks like maybe Podomatic does list with... Okay, so it says at top, and will help you get your podcast in front of millions. And it looks like it has links for Google Podcasts, Pandora, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and Deezer. I don't know what Deezer is. So talk podcasts, comedy, sports. So I mean, it seems like in the long run that each of these have their big caveats and their promises. So I think overall it sounds like, and I have it. I'm now super hesitant to say anything because it feels like some of the caveats are always a little hidden. So I want to say SoundCloud sounds like it's probably one of the better options for simplicity's sake. So it looks like they might have options for download on certain stores. Okay, so looking at Connect, community support. Do you have a fact? Okay, let's see if we get a little more information over here. SoundCloud is the world's largest music and audio hosting site and introduced its hosting platform in 2015. Using their hosting service, you get access to all of their embedded players, Twitter cards, and timed comments. With a free account, you can upload 3 hours of content per month and get basic reporting. Now, I don't know if that's a hard cap for 3 hours and then you have to remove before you can add. So I'm not getting a lot of detail other than I'll probably just have to experiment. So create account. What are we looking at? I don't want to give you that information right now. That's a horrible way to sign in. It's not what I was looking for. Home, give me data. Why do none of these sites give you the pertinent information about using their service? They just assume you're going to know all the in and outs. It's a terrible way of doing things. You'd think they'd be a little more clear on some of this up front, but I guess you wouldn't want to be. For creators, what do you got? Tell me about your thing. Upload instantly, connect with your community, build your fan base. So collaborate with other artists and get your music in front. I'm not a musician. That's not what I'm doing. Get real-time feedback with stats and in-track comments and grow your audience by distributing your music. Mastering on SoundCloud, make a living from your music. Get heard, get paid, and take your career to the next level with Repost by SoundCloud. Studio sessions takes the spotlight off the stage and into the room where the music happens. That's beautifully vague. Thanks for no real useful information. Fast track your career. Partner offers. Your story, whatever. Come on. Literally, you have to tell me somewhere what it's going to cost me to do this. Jeez Louise. Host and share podcasts all from one place. SoundCloud. Connect instantly. Grow your following. All right, come on. You have to have a fact file I can read. No, it's not what I asked you. How do I get started? How does SoundCloud work? Support resources. Nope. None of that is useful. All right, cool. Creator guide. Let's see what you got in there. Please don't start playing loud audio. Yeah, okay, cool. It's on mute. Set up your profile, network, and engagement. SoundCloud is all about the community. Find out how to grow your network. Yeah, no. Optimizing your tracks, sharing your work. Promote. Monetize on SoundCloud. Distribute on SoundCloud. Apple, Spotify, YouTube, Instagram, and more. So maybe it's an option. So let's look at distribute. Want to get heard, get paid, and reach audiences all over the world. At no added cost to a Pro Unlimited subscription, or for 1 year fee of $30, You can join Repost by SoundCloud to access professional marketing services, monetize on SoundCloud, and distribute unlimited tracks to Spotify, Apple Music, Instagram, TikTok, and more, while keeping 80% of your revenue, which this quick video to see how it is. Yeah, okay. So possibly, it seems like the methodology for sending things through from SoundCloud is more complicated and more restricted. Which makes me suspect that Podomatic's stuff is not as simple either. So SoundCloud Pro account would be $12 a month, billed yearly. Unlimited upload time of any type of audio. Lossless HD storage and download. Scheduling your releases. Dashboard. Full embedded player customization. Pin up to 5 tracks. Saving on tools from the biggest name in music. I don't care. Replace your tracks, audio files. Mastering up to 3 free tracks per month. Not a priority. Disable comments and control who can see public stats with quiet mode. Okay, so that might be something that may come into play where you would disable comments on a file so that only the markers I put down could be used. If that's even a thing. I don't know. It looks like it's also an online only service, so you can't download the files. So there does seem to be some limitations to what you can do with it, but they also have some capabilities that the others don't have. Right now, honestly, it looks like Podomatic is one that's offering a lot more options. Is this the one that freaks out when I tell it I want to make a podcast? Create a podcast for free. Powerful stats. Create podcast and promote it. So I could put that on other services like Twitter and Facebook. That's fine. Patreon for support. Okay, so okay, how do I get my podcast on Google Podcast? To submit Google Podcast, click Submit Here. Drop your RSS feed. Follow Google's instructions to verify your feed and email. Your show and all its contents and future episodes will now be available on. So it looks like that's pretty straightforward. I could get onto the Google Podcast feature relatively quickly. So I can get it up on Facebook, Twitter, and potentially as a podcast on Google Podcast. It doesn't say anything about how do I post an episode to Facebook. It doesn't seem to say anything about like the Apple or other ones. So which ones were they saying they could help with? Google Podcasts, Pandora, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and Deezer. That's the big question right there. They have a forum where you can talk with other creators there. I don't know. I guess I'll look into it a little bit further. We're an hour and 10 minutes in. I got work tomorrow. I will catch you later. Hope you're doing all right. Thanks for joining me tonight. When's the next day? What day is today? I got the right days, right? Today is August 26th. Today is Wednesday, August 26th. So Thursday is my next, well, Tuesday night, Wednesday morning right now. Thursday night will be the next time I'm up. Until then, take care. Have a good night. Unai.